Local sales in South Africa's new car market remain resilient, while exports have been hit hard in February of this year. Despite lower vehicle financing rates and better consumer optimism, there were certain hurdles in trade circumstances and specific car categories. The Automotive Business Council says the sale of passenger cars saw a 17% year-on-year gain, while commercial vehicle sales fell. The council attributes the decrease in commercial vehicle sales to persistent challenges in business confidence. Vehicle exports, on the other hand, fell by 8.6%. That's despite forecasts of softer monetary policy in key export markets. Standard Bank Group Dealer Sales and Marketing Head Mothusi Dire speaks to us about this. Thank you so much for your time, Mothusi. Let's first try to get an understanding based on these numbers. Are South Africans buying cars or not? And what is the state of the car market overall?
Good afternoon, Tumisang. Good afternoon to the viewers at home as well. Certainly, there is a positive sentiment that is coming through from the South African consumers. And as you've just quoted now, when one looks at the NAMSA figures that were published a few moments ago, we saw the passenger vehicles coming through at 18.6% when one looks at year-to-date improvement. And when you look at really the year-on-year, again, from passenger vehicles, you're looking at 16.8. So that in itself, it boosts some positive sentiment from the consumers and from ourselves as a bank as well. I think since the relief of the interest rate that was recorded last year in September, we also saw a very decent activity as far as the applications are concerned, really for consumers that are looking for funding, that are looking to take up asset finance. And just to highlight a bit of a few, in January, we saw an increase as far as the applications are concerned. And generally, we will then allude that to some of the delay in purchases from December and for us to actually track that particular activity. And when we now looked at our February activity in terms of really the total application, we actually have gone up 2% year on year as far as the applications are concerned. So that in itself, it is the further confirmation or as testament to say that consumers do have an appetite and they are really in that cycle of saying they would like to reward themselves with a set of wheels.
That's a bit encouraging, but we are also maybe seeing an inkling that the recent ease in monetary policy, the repo rate cuts that the Reserve Bank has dispensed are not nearly doing as much as we had hoped for, Mothusi.
And I'm in agreement with that. So when we look, the single digits, right, it is not where we want it to be because we would all want to enjoy the double-digit growth. And I think from Standard Bank perspective, we also know that a Q3 is generally the biggest where the activity comes through. So when one takes that into consideration, we say we do welcome the growth that we are seeing. We know Q1 is generally a bit sluggish as well as Q2, but Q3, that's where we ramp. When we look at Q3 of 2024 in comparison to previous 2 years, we actually saw a record of 9.3% in terms of quarter-on-quarter increase on vehicle loan application. That was one of our highest in the last 2 years. So that in itself, as much as the current levels are relatively on the lower end, they're still positive. And we also again say it's part of the seasonality of the environment that we operate in, with the anticipation that if this movement keeps on going this way, then in Q3, we're hoping that South Africans will go out in numbers and really continue to support us in terms of submitting their vehicle loan applications, and in turn, hopefully then they will get approved and then drive out with a set of wheels.
I'm glad you mentioned the seasonality of vehicle sales. A big debate has also emerged around trends. Of course, Germans versus the Asians. What's your take on what South Africans are taking home?
Look, when you follow the NAMSA figures, as we spoke earlier on, you'll also note that the NAMSA as an industry, they do track the new vehicle sales there. And when one follows that particular report, you can also see that you do have your Asian manufacturers really at the top two now, and whereas before it used to be Asian and European manufacturer. And when you then start to look at the new entrants in the market, they're actually coming through a lot more. So you track your top 15, you actually see a lot more, new entrants, more on the Asian, type of a market coming actually through. And when you want to zone in specifically on some of the details there, you will see the likes of your Omoda and JQ South Africa coming in as well as part of the top 15. And Omoda and JQ, you would know that it is part of the Cherry Auto South Africa as well, including Jator. So when you take the four manufacturers in a sense, and I'm talking Cherry, Omoda, JQ, and Jator in that regard, they actually now go over 3,000 units that they have sold as per report in the month of February. And when you then overlay that with the historic part, you then see that that total number, to a degree, it actually exceeds that of Ford Motor Company as per their report. So that means it becomes part of the top 5 in a sense, right? So that trend, we can see it is there based on the stats, and even from our application volume from the Standard Bank perspective, we do also see some of those numbers actually coming through. And when one looks at the new vehicles in the now compared to what we used to see in a decade ago, you almost could say a decade ago we were sitting around about 35 to 40% of applications looking at new vehicles. Currently, we're looking at sub 35. We're actually seeing a lot more hovering between 32 to 33% in terms of really the new vehicle applications that is coming through. So that is also indicative of the shift that you are actually talking to, looking at the times then as compared to the times now.
That's interesting. And as a parting shot, speaking of the vehicles that are available in the market, when you spoke of the competition that is around the Asian, Europeans and German car makers in South Africa, what has that done for affordability? Because seeing some of these new entrants is telling in terms of what is affordable on the market and the workmanship of it.
Yeah, so affordability is quite subjective because really it's more on the consumer side to say what are they able to afford. So at Standard Bank, the one ways that we really are working with the consumers is one, we're also making our applications a lot more easier, where we say that customers or consumers can apply via our app. And in the app there, as they move through from, you go from explore products and then you go down to your vehicle and then you apply. The opportunity that we have agreed and putting out ahead there is to say you can go up to 84 months in terms of your vehicle term. And now some customers will take that option. Some customers will take the traditional 60 months or 72, or some will even go 54. So that speaks to, again, the customer's personal assessment of their own affordability. But again, it's a question of, is what I'm paying for value for money? And that's what consumers then are looking into to say, is the rent that I'm going to spend equivalent of the value for money that I get? And that value for money will be in a form of usage, will be in a form of extras, the bells and whistles that they do get on the vehicle. So affordability, in a sense, to me, Sammy, it is really a subjective one, depending on what the consumers are willing to spend, overlaying that with really a value for money. Like I said, we've also ensured that we make the process of acquisition a lot more easier, and that speaks again to say value for money for us to looking after the customers. Predominantly Standard Bank One. If you don't bank with us, come over. Let's make your life a lot more easier as well and have that good experience.
Thank you for your input. Mothusi Dire is, of course, with the Standard Bank Group. They're talking to us about the latest car sales as well as trends.